Hello everyone, welcome to Come Sit at My Table. We appreciate you being here. Today we are making a key lime cake. Now key lime is one of our favorite summer flavors. We absolutely love anything key lime. Key lime pie, key lime cookies, key lime popsicles, and key lime cake. I want to give you just a little backstory of this recipe. Many years ago, in fact, it was when Melissa and I bought our very first computer for here at home. We had computers at school, but we'd never had one at home. And we bought a home computer, and I discovered a website called teachers.net. Now, I don't think that website really exists or isn't active much anymore, but back then, and that was probably more than 20 years ago, there was a section on there for each grade level where teachers could go in and talk to other teachers about what they were doing in their classroom and get ideas. So I was on the 5th grade board a couple of times a week. Melissa would look at the 2nd grade board. But there was also a tab on that website for teacher recipes. And that's where this recipe came from. There was a lady on that website who did not use her real name. She called herself the IRU. I don't know what that stood for, but that was what her name was on there. And she posted this recipe one day, so I copied it. In fact, I think it's the only recipe I copied from that teacher's recipe website. And we have used this a lot. We really do enjoy this cake. Now, this recipe is in our cookbook on page 297. So if you have a copy of our cookbook, you can turn to page 297 and follow along as I do this recipe. If you don't have our cookbook and you'd like a copy, you can go right below this video. There's a description box, and in that description box, right under the video, you'll see it says key lime cake. You can click on that title. That box will expand. You'll see where Melissa has put the written recipe for this cake. She always puts our recipes right there in that box. Right at the end of that recipe, you'll see the word more. If you click on it, that will expand even further, and you'll find our contact information where you can send us recipes if you'd like to. And under that is a link to the Amazon page where you can purchase our cookbook. So if you have our cookbook, open to page 297. And let's get started cooking. Let's talk about what we're going to use. We're going to start with 3/4 of a cup of oil. Now you can use whatever kind of oil you want. I'm using canola oil, but you use whatever you want. It does need to be a flavorless oil though. We're going to use 3/4 of a cup of orange juice. Now Melissa and I like the Tropicana no pulp, but that's up to you. You use your favorite. We're also using 5 eggs, a 3.4 ounce box of lime Jell-O, and a box of lemon cake mix. Now this is a 15.25 ounce box because that's the biggest box of cake mix I can find anymore. I used to use an 18 ounce cake mix for this. But as we all know, those don't exist anymore. So I'm using a 15.25 ounce box, but any lemon cake mix will work. I would just suggest getting one that's the largest you can find. That's our cake. We're going to mix those 5 ingredients, put it into a greased and floured 9x13 pan, and bake it on 350 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes, or until the center is done. When that comes out, we're going to mix together 3/4 of a cup of key lime juice. Now today I'm using Kermit's key lime juice because Melissa and I just brought this back with us a few weeks ago from our trip to Key West. And in fact, I used this same key lime juice last week for some key lime cookies we made on here. So if you want to go back and find those, if you haven't seen it already, but that's what I'm using today. However, I can never find Kermit's key lime juice in stores here. So I normally use a product called Nellie and Joe's famous Key West lime juice. and it works perfectly fine. This is what I use 90% of the time when I do anything key lime. And this is available everywhere. I've seen it in Walmart, I've seen it in Publix, Kroger, everywhere. So either will work, or any other key lime juice. And we're gonna mix our key lime juice with 1 cup of powdered sugar. Now, once that's mixed and our cake is out of the oven, we're going to use a skewer to poke holes all over that cake. I used to use a fork, but what I found recently was that if I use the blunt end of a skewer, it makes the holes a little bit bigger. The juice and the powdered sugar can seep down in there better. So I just poke holes all over that cake with a skewer. You can use whatever you have. A fork will work fine. I wouldn't use something like a big round end on a wooden spoon, because there's not really anything to fill those holes with this. You just want to be able to let that juice seep down in there.
And make the cake really moist.
And it will be very moist. Now, once the cake has cooled completely and that juice and powdered sugar have soaked in, we're going to make a frosting to go on top. And for that, we're going to use 1 8-ounce block of cream cheese, 1/2 stick of butter. That's 4 tablespoons, so we'll only use half that stick of butter. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I'm using vanilla bean paste, but vanilla extract works perfectly fine. That's what I've almost always used. And 3.5 cups of powdered sugar again. Okay, this is so simple. Our first 5 ingredients, the oil, the orange juice, the eggs, the lime Jell-O, and the lemon cake mix, just all go right into our mixer and get blended together before we put it in our pan to bake. So there are my 2 liquids. I'm going to add my eggs. Just put those right in. I'm going to add my lime Jell-O. And of course, that is going to give it a little bit of a green color, which I don't really like, because key lime is really not green, it's yellow, but I can't help that. And in goes our cake mix. You know what, I'm just gonna pull that up out of there. That's easier for me to dump in. Okay. Now we're just going to put our beater on, raise our bowl, and we're going to let that beat together just until it is completely combined. All right, our cake is completely mixed. If you don't have a blade that scrapes the sides of your bowl, you will want to stop your mixer and scrape down the sides of your bowl and scrape off your beater blade, and make sure that everything is incorporated. Okay. Melissa, I'm just gonna go right here to the stove if that's okay with you.
Works for me.
Okay. I'm gonna scrape this off. Get all this cake mix off there, because we want all that to go in the cake. We don't want to waste that, do we? We want a good full cake. Okay. Scrape down this side real quick. All right. And let's get it into our pan. There are quite a few air bubbles in here. So I might, no, it's not too bad. I might drop it on the counter a time or two just to get the air bubbles out of it. But now that I've started pouring it in, it doesn't look as bad as I thought it was going to be. You know, when I use round cake pans, I have cake strips that fit around those round cake pans so that the edges don't bake too fast. and then leave a hump in the middle of your cake. But I cannot get those cake strips to fit on a rectangular 9x13 pan. If one of you out there is an inventor, I sure would appreciate you inventing some cake strips for 9x13 pans. Or if you know that there is such a thing, let me know. Put a comment down here in the bottom under this video. There's a place for comments, and we love hearing from you anyway, so leave us a comment. But if you know that there are cake strips for 9x13 pans, please let me know that, and I will order them. All right, Melissa, I am going to drop this. Hang on. If you've got sensitive ears, turn the volume down. Here we go. Okay, that should do it. Now we're going into our preheated 350-degree oven for 30 to 40 minutes until the center is done, and I will check it with that skewer that I'm going to use after the cake comes out. In we go. Our cake is out of the oven. It baked 35 minutes, so right in the middle of the time, because the recipe says 30 to 40 minutes. It has been out for 15 minutes exactly. It's still really warm, but we're going to go ahead and make our juice and powdered sugar mixture to drizzle over it. Now, I do want to tell you before we do that, you'll notice that the color of this key lime juice is a little darker than what key lime juice is when you first open the bottle. When you get a fresh bottle of key lime juice, it's usually a pale yellow color because that's the color of key lime juice. But once the bottle's opened and you refrigerate it, it darkens. It's perfectly fine. It's just that because it's been opened and the air has gotten to it, it does darken the juice a little. I'm going to tell you that years ago when Melissa and I first got married and we went to Key West and I brought key lime juice back, I used a little of it, put it in the refrigerator, opened it back a few days later to use it. It had darkened to this color and I thought, oh my goodness, it's gone bad. So I poured it out. And that happened a couple of times before I found out that it's very natural for it to darken in color once it's been opened. So don't throw it away if you open your key lime juice and go back to use it later and it's darkened a little. That's perfectly normal. Now we're just going to put our juice and our powdered sugar right in this bowl, and we're going to whisk those together. And you just want to make sure that they're completely combined and that there are no lumps of sugar in there, because you don't want that sugar laying on top of your cake. Of course, that's not going to really hurt it because you're going to cover it with a frosting anyway. But you want that sugar to seep down into the cake. So just whisk it up really well. If you want to, you can even take your whisk and roll it between your hands. That usually breaks up any lumps. Okay, that's pretty good. Now we need to poke holes in our cake before we drizzle the juice over it. So I'm just going to take the blunt end of this skewer and start poking holes all over this cake. All right, I'm just going to pour my juice and powdered sugar on and let it just seep right down into that cake. I'm going to try to get it all the way to the edges because we want the edges to be moist, just like the center. If you want to do this in batches, you can do about half of it, let it soak in really well, and then come back and do the other half. But I'm usually not that patient. I usually just put it all on there and let it soak in. Now this is going to make your cake really moist. It's going to make it so delicious, and it's going to give it that wonderful key lime taste. So don't be afraid to put it all on there. If some goes down in between the cake and the pan. That's okay, that'll soak in too. Not gonna hurt anything. Okay, now we have to allow this to cool completely before we make our frosting and put onto the cake, because we don't want it to melt on this hot cake. So that's gonna take a little while, but as soon as it has cooled, we'll make the frosting. Our cake has cooled completely, so now we're going to make the frosting. I'm just putting in the cream cheese and the butter. I'm going to scrape that off because we want all of that in there. Okay, and we're going to let those two cream together until they are completely combined. And then I'm going to add our 1 teaspoon of vanilla. By the way, my cream cheese and butter were at room temperature. They have both been out. Well, the butter stays out. We don't refrigerate our butter. But the cream cheese had been out for an hour or more. Well, probably closer to 2 hours. So those were easy to incorporate. I'm going to add my vanilla. And you want this to have some flavor, so don't be skimpy on your vanilla. Put it in there. I'm going to turn that off so that it doesn't throw it against the sides of the mixing bowl. I want it to be down there in that cream cheese. Okay, and then we'll stir that in. And now we're going to start adding our powdered sugar. I'm going to turn that on the lowest setting because I really don't want that all over my kitchen or me. I'll put just a little bit in, get it stirred in, and we'll just keep going. We'll keep adding a little bit at a time until it's all combined. All right, our icing is ready to put on the cake. I like to just put dollops all over the cake and then try to spread it out some. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to tell you, this cake is delicious. But man, this cream cheese icing, in my opinion, it just makes the cake. Look at that. Doesn't that look delicious?
It does.
So we're making this cake. You want to say why we're making this cake?
Because our kids are coming home tomorrow to have lunch with us.
Woohoo! We are excited. Our kids are going to be here and we're having lunch together. And we just thought, you know, this is a great summer cake. So we're making the cake to have with them. And I can almost guarantee you that what they don't eat, they will take home with them, which is fine with us.
Absolutely.
We love sending them home with food. We love taking food to them. We like sending them home with food. That's the fun part of being a parent, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's one of the fun things about being a parent. But we're going to have to try this before we serve it to them, right?
Quality control, baby. Quality control.
Absolutely. We have to make sure it's okay before we serve it to our kids.
That won't bother them in the least.
Now, those of you that have been around here a while already know when I spread something like frosting, I use the back of a spoon. I just think it's much easier, much neater than doing it with a knife or an offset spatula. And if I wasn't going to use a spoon, I'd probably use an offset spatula. But I really do like using the back of a spoon. If you haven't tried that before, give it a try. You might be surprised how much easier it is. Now, you just want to make a little design across the top of your cake. Make it pretty. Okay, there we go. Are we ready to try bites?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna grab a plate here. And a little spatula. All right. You want a corner or you want a...
Sure, corner's fine.
Corner's fine? Okay.
Just a little bite.
Tell you what, I'll just cut a little bite for us to try. We'll save the rest for them. Well, I don't think I cut all the way through. Sorry. There we go. Yummy, yummy. There's a fork here. All right, babe. Are you ready?
I am.
You get the first bite.
That is so good. I love how moist it is. I love how moist it is.
Yeah, that's because of that key lime juice and powdered sugar.
Great flavor.
Man, that is good. Delicious. If you like key lime flavor, you're going to love this cake. The cake has that really strong key lime flavor, but the icing, the frosting is really sweet. So they're kind of opposites. You get that sweet and tart. Man, it's delicious. All right, we hope you'll give this a try, and we think you'll enjoy it every bit as much as we do. We would appreciate you going right below this video and clicking that thumbs up button. That's the like button. The more people who click that, the more times YouTube will share our video. So we would appreciate you helping us with that. If you haven't before, we invite you to click that subscribe button that's right below the video. If you'll click it and the little notification bell beside of it, and then the word all, that will subscribe you to our channel, and YouTube will notify you every time we add a new video. And then, of course, at the very bottom of the screen, there's a place for you to leave us a comment, and we love hearing from you. So feel free to go down there and just leave us a comment. We'd love to read what you have to say. Thanks so much for watching our video. We do appreciate it. We want you to remember that you are always welcome to come sit at my table. Have a great day.